Hey, what's up? Welcome back. It's episode 15, and this week Pat's not here, the pups need a bath, and almost none of the training went to plan. So stick around and find out what's been happening. So a lot's happened this week, and unfortunately there's been a lot that affected the training, so I had to make adjustments to make sure I wasn't setting them up for failure and things like that. So we're going to be discussing all of that and what we worked on. So that'll incorporate tracking, shaping, play and bite work, social skills, and taking the boys to a dog wash. So we'll start off with tracking. I'm also going to refer to my notes here because, as I said, it's been a long week and I can't remember it all. So the previous plan for tracking was to continue some occasional long distance tracks on the grass and keep building the distance there, and we did none of that. It was raining for a majority of the week in the mornings, which was annoying in the sense I can't film as easily or at all some days. Although I wasn't in control of the rain, that counts as one level of difficulty that got increased for something. So I decreased the difficulty of the length of the track. It was a success. I didn't film it though because it was raining, but there's not a lot to show. It's just a normal tracking session. Then it went well, it's just raining. So aside from that, hard surface tracking. Okay, so again, they're not ready to be doing that in the rain. So I kept it relatively short, but rather than developing that further in distance, because I was limited on where I could do it in the rain and everything, what I did was more general, like I focused on generalizing hard surface tracking. So I took them to multiple areas and did these short tracks to show them that hard surface tracking can occur anywhere. It's totally okay to do it this way, and it worked out really well. They saw a lot of different places. They tracked in, a lot of different car parks at shop fronts and things like that. They're all public spaces, so this is why I say I can be a bit limited sometimes on what I can do given the weather conditions. But later on, the weather gets incorporated into it all to the point they can track under pretty much any conditions. It's just they're not there yet. We did the tracking, they did well, except their article indications turned to shit. So that's not entirely unexpected, but it is definitely undesirable. The reason their article indications are getting pretty sloppy is because of the shaping that we're doing. So what's happening is they're doing an amazing track, but then when it comes time to getting to that article, they find it. They recognize that, yep, that's the thing, I found it. And rather than indicating in a nice way there, they'll often turn around and look at me, or they'll turn around and come back to me, and then they might go back to the article, come back to me a little bit and go back to it. And what they're doing is turning it into a shaping session. And in the shaping sessions, we use terminal markers. So what they're doing is as they find the article, they're anticipating me marking the behavior and them coming back and getting food from me. So it's up to me to really define each of the windows of opportunity and make it very clear when I'm putting them in a shaping window and when I'm putting them in a tracking window. So what I'm doing is I'm putting that thing out, like for example, a cone, but then I'm not letting them succeed and we start shaping straight away. I don't give that opening of the window cue, like go to work. I don't give that straight away. As they go towards it, I'll give their no reward marker and I'll not let them succeed, and I'll go, hey, we're not doing that right now. You're in free liberty, go sniff the bushes and things like that. Once I can see they're not trying to turn on the shaping window and they're just off in their own little world, then I'll give the cue and I'll say, hey, we're starting shaping now. I'll say, go to work. Go to work. Nice, buddy. And we start shaping. And then again, at the end of shaping, I'll say, hey, like we're finished now. They will either go into calm liberty and I say finished, or I'll say free and they're in free liberty or something like that. So I then leave the object down that we were shaping with, but I finish the session there and they then have to move on. So it's just mostly a matter of me giving a little extra help in differentiating those windows of opportunity and just giving them the time to recognize the differences. So the next thing we've got is shaping. As I said, I'm working on the clarity around the windows of opportunity, so I'm being really consistent with that, being very clear there. And what we've been doing is shaping around a cone and also doing some muzzle work. With the cone from last week, we showed that they started to develop some understanding of going out and around that cone and then coming back. It was just a 1-rep thing. Now they're starting to progress and do 2 circles around it. We've also then been doing the muzzle. With this, There's particular progressions that I want for this later. These dogs will learn to do some muzzle fighting later, so I want them to put their nose into the muzzle in a very particular way. But the way that I try to set them up for success here is not something I usually do when rewarding. When they come to me for food, I have the food in my hand and I actually push it into their face and kind of force them backwards a little bit in order to take it. Then once they've taken it, I sit back where I usually am, and it gives this little bit of space between them and the muzzle so that they can actually come forward and put their head into it. Whereas if they're over the top of the muzzle taking the food, they're not as likely to back up and then come forward and rediscover that the muzzle's there. Because remember, at this point, they don't know it. If I wasn't on the grass and if I didn't have kibble, then I would be throwing the food away. In this circumstance, I didn't want them to be hunting in the grass for the kibble for too much. I wanted some quicker repetitions. They're figuring it out. They're starting to realize that, just putting your nose in there's no duration or anything, but over the next week, we'll probably continue the muzzle work. We might continue the cone or maybe introduce something new. So up next, we've got bite work and play. I'd planned to start bite work again with them this week. I thought they were going to be ready, but unfortunately they're not. So it became obvious that Parker is a little bit ahead of Peter. Obviously, his teeth came out first and the new ones came in, but he has now suddenly become a lot more playful and wanting to bite everything all over again, but actively trying to hold on to things and pull them to get them as well. So these are all good signs. Peter will be following shortly, I guarantee it. And now I've then started to introduce with Parker particularly more tug games and starting to bring in a little bit more intensity. So the play at the moment is looking pretty good. I'm happy that this is our starting point post teething, and we're just going to be kind of assessing them to figure out when they're ready, and then we'll get back into bite work. Then we've got social skills. So continuing on from what I touched on last week, they get individual time in the yard, they get time together in the yard, and they also get time with my dog in the yard. I'm sort of managing everything and reminding everyone what they need to do and their part, but the idea is that I become redundant, that they then can start to navigate these scenarios on their own. And for everyone to cooperate. To begin with, I need to help them, and I need to use some spatial pressure. I need to use some tactile pressure. I actually need to make contact and block them and go, hey, you need to go somewhere else, those sort of things. But I want to phase my help out as much as possible. And one of the things that helps me to do that is using a whip. And although that sounds a bit odd, it's a horse dressage whip. It's a bit long and it's quite thin. It's nice and light. I've also used a broom handle and a PVC pipe for this, things like that. I just prefer the whip because it's nice and light. It's easy to maneuver. Now, the reason I use that is for an extension of my arm. So if I need to block the dog because they're starting to stalk forward and they're going to want to now launch at my dog Genta or the other puppy that's out, instead of me getting up, walking over and blocking them, that's a very obvious thing. It's quite a big picture change. This whip can help me do that in a more subtle way. So I can stay seated, and as they're coming forward, where I would usually get up and block them with my body, I can pop the whip out, and then that can rest on their chest. Or if they need to move to the side, I can tap that on their shoulder or, on their flank or things like that. So that's not so much of a picture change and it isn't so obvious to them. And that subtlety can then help me phase my help out so that they don't need me as much anymore. Eventually it will be completely on verbal where I don't have to do anything. And then after that, they can navigate all these things on their own without my help, without me directing them. In addition to that, another thing that's kind of always running in the background, but again, isn't needed or necessarily wanted by everyone, is having the ability to work a dog while another one is around but not under a command. So they're at liberty, they're not leashed or anything, but they're not interrupting the session. There's clarity and there's no conflict. We're still keeping it pretty simple, it's early days, but what I'm doing is first I taught them to catch food. That's something some dogs aren't good at naturally, so I've taught them that. And then what they're doing now is I'll throw food to one dog, and while that dog is catching that food, the other dog has to wait their turn. So they're working on a little bit of impulse control here and cooperation. If that first dog drops the food, they miss it, they can go and get it, but the other dog can't try to race them to it. There's no There's no competition here. There's no interaction of any kind with each other, really. Your interaction is with me when I'm engaging with you. Otherwise, you need to just pause there for a moment. Oh, that's inconvenient. The camera cut out at some point there. But I was saying that this is just one of the many steps in the progressions to developing these pups to be able to work side by side, or having one working and the other being at liberty, and progressing with all of that. So I think, as I said earlier, I'm a bit confused now of what I've already said, but this isn't necessarily something that everyone needs, and it's not necessarily what everyone wants. But for me, the way I live with the dogs, the way I train them, the things that they're getting developed for, this is a very useful skill for them and is going to pay dividends later on. The final thing that we're going to talk about is going to the dog wash. So originally that was going to be a bit of a vlog style video. I asked my little sister to come and film it for me, just to help me out there. And I was going to do that, show you what that was like the first time, talk through what I did in the week. But this is how it went.
It's episode 15.
It went perfectly fine, except I must have screwed up something with the audio, because when I came back and looked at the footage, it was not usable. It just wasn't good enough quality to actually make a video from. So to sum it all up, there was nothing drastically notable about it. They weren't particularly fond of it at first, but they've been prepped with some baths at home just using the hose. The only thing that they had no exposure to was the dryer, like the industrial style dryer. Again, they weren't particularly fond of that, but much like the trimming the nails and the vet handling drills, and we have enough trust in our relationship. You need to cooperate here and it'll be done and everything's going to be okay. And then by the time they're adults, it's just normal. They just go, oh, okay, yeah, this is just a thing, much like trimming their nails. So I've checked the notes. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this episode, if you find value in this series that Pat and I have been working on, we'd love it if you could like the video, comment something that you've found interesting or valuable, and consider subscribing to both of our channels. The profiles will be somewhere here on the page. That's then going to help other people find this video series as well, and hopefully get some value out of it as well. So we appreciate all the support regardless, and until next time, see you later.